Hello there, everybody. It seems like I am flailing with technology today because I have, where are we? There we are. I have hit the countdown timer and not actually done the go live button. So, yeah, I try really hard, but the technology uh, kicks me in the butt now and again. So I am Cindy Drozda, and I'm here in my shop. Uh, and I'd like to let you know about some stuff that's coming up here, right coming up. And to start with, here's where I am: Erie, Colorado, USA, right in the middle of the USA. And this weekend on Saturday, I'm having a free sharing and Q&A session, which you can get the link for if you sign up for my email list. I posted the link back when I thought I was live a couple minutes ago. And so that's it. If you're already on the list, you don't need to sign up again. And I hope you'll join me. It'll be fun. Share some of your completed work, work in progress, ask a question, take a look at what everyone else is doing. It's always a good time, fun and learning with wood turning. And this is my current class schedule here. I'm doing a series of 4 sessions on learning to turn lidded containers. We had the Waterfall lidded bowl part 1 already a couple weeks ago, and I will be doing the finial and pedestal for that next weekend, a week from this coming Saturday. Then the lidded chalice on September 17th and the lidded hollow vessel on October 8th. If you want to pair these up, I'm doing the vessel and then the finials next weekend. So you could pair session 1 and session 2 for the entire project, or sessions 3 and 2, or 4 and 2. So that's kind of how it works. I know it's a little confusing, but I'm trying to cover a lot of stuff here and show you my favorite thing, which is lidded containers and vessels. And please, anyone who's inclined to ask a question of me, please post it in the chat there and I can see it. And yeah, I got a little bit of a slow start there with the technology, but we're going good now. So if you'd like to talk about what's coming up or what you'd like me to do next or anything at all, let me know. Post it in the chat. Coming up in August is the SWAT Symposium. That's always a great time. I'll be there, and my friend Todd will be there, and Lyle and Joe. And, if you like Vendor Showcase, we're all 6 going to be there. So hope to see you in Waco in late August. This is something little known. The AAW is doing a virtual symposium, and it doesn't say in this graphic here, but it's kind of targeted toward newer turners. So the projects are very well explained and they are not over everybody's head. And it's a good place to find a skill building challenge. So I hope you'll join us all for that. It'll be fun. And now for the big event. Tod Raines and I have decided to do a tag team live stream series on bottle stoppers. And it's alternating Thursdays for me and alternating Fridays for Todd. So the way it's going to work is today I start out with showing you how I have done bottle stoppers in the long past. And then tomorrow, Todd will be showing you another way and some of his own things. So we're going to alternate weeks and show you some fun stuff here. Here's Todd's graphic. See, we're at different times of day and different days of the week here, so you kind of have to keep track of it. If you subscribe to our YouTube channels, you'll get a notification. If you look on Facebook and you are liked or friended our pages and profiles, then you'll get a notification in Facebook's notifications. Twitch, I'm not sure how they notify anyone, but I'm on Twitch. I should be on Twitch now if there are any twitchers out there, please say something so I know that there's somebody twitching around today. So Todd will be 2:30 Central tomorrow, and I am always at 2 o'clock Eastern, which is 1 o'clock Central on Thursday, every other one. Bottle stoppers. Yeah. One of the very first things I did to make a living was bottle stoppers and pens. They were both projects I could do with minimal skills and tools. And what turned out was the bottle stoppers, especially, are very, very creative and really allow me to do some practice for the cuts, and more than anything, putting uh, the shapes together. So you can see how my bottle stoppers kind of look like the beginnings of what were eventually my finials. And that's what I'd like to talk about today is how I used to do bottle stoppers. And we're talking about the 90s here is when I did this. So it's been a while, and the bottle stopper world has definitely changed. So I'm going to get up some bottle stoppers that I've done and talk to you a bit about I'll zoom in a bit here, a little bit about how and what I'm going to show you today. So I started doing bottle stoppers with corks on them. Nobody uses corks anymore, I realize, but I used corks, and it's a what it is. It's a hollow cork, or a cork with a hole in it, sized for an average wine bottle, and then I've got a dowel to go through the middle of it. If you have a question for me, by the way, I will take a look here at the chat. Oh, yes, Wrangler is on Friday, and anybody else who might happen to be over on the other side of the world. It is Friday at 5 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning. So wherever you are in the world, it's a different time. So we say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever you are. And yeah, if you have a question or you want to share some bottle stopper experience, type your question and I'll take a look. Okay, so I have this dowel that goes through the cork and into the wood part. And there are two ways I tried this. One is I would drill a hole in my blank and glue the dowel in, and then chuck on the dowel in my lathe chuck to turn the wood part. Well, that's kind of marginal because the dowel is really not sturdy enough, and it doesn't support the piece of wood very well. So the way I've taken to doing it is to glue the dowel into the cork ahead of time, turn the wood piece on a mandrel. I'll show you my mandrels here coming up, and then glue this cork dowel assembly into the bottle stopper, the wooden part. And I've done them a couple different ways. One way is to just leave the little bit of beveled dowel sticking out the bottom of the cork, which actually looks fine, but it's maybe some people object to that. The other thing I took to doing was sanding off the dowel flush with the cork, which is a little cleaner look. Now, these two stoppers here are old ones that have been in use a long time. I use this one more than the burl one for I don't know what reason. I guess I just like the shape. And so it's been in many a wine bottle and has kind of crunched up with age and taken on a sort of you can tell I drink red wine a lot. It's kind of taken on a patina there, but it's still working, so you don't really need those modern stainless steel bottle stoppers to make a wine stopper. It can be done low tech, and I'm going to show you the low tech way, but just a little preview. This is the modern way with a metal piece that's got O-rings. And that's kind of a longer lasting and classier bottle stopper, but a lot of different ways you can do it. And any bottle stopper can be any number of things. If you look on Ruth Niles' website, and let me get her up here. That's Ruth Niles' website. She's the one I'd get the stainless hardware from if I were going to do it that way. And she shows a gallery of all kinds of creative things. A bottle stopper doesn't even really need to be turned. Okay, so let's get to how I'm going to do my bottle stoppers here. I've got a piece of wood here in the chuck, and I am just at the moment gripping the blank. It's 1 3/4, which is, how many millimeters is that? It's about 45, and it's about 2 3/4 long, which is 70 millimeters. Anything goes with bottle stoppers. This is just the size I chose to do now. And I am going to bring up my tailstock just because it's not in the way, and it's always a good idea. So if you've got a question, please do post in the chat here, and I will answer. I see Matt's made some bottle stoppers. This is cool. Yeah. Well, leftover wine. I live alone, so I rarely drink a whole bottle of wine in one day. But just a word on that. The bottle stopper is a great gift, and even people who don't drink wine like bottle stoppers. They're fun for decorating your kitchen. A lot of people collect them. It's a nice little thing you made that you can give someone. Yeah, bottle stoppers are for quitters. Well, hey, what can I say? I'm a quitter. Nobody has leftover wine except for me, and I have made good use of those bottle stoppers. So, yeah, well, some people maybe that haven't done a whole lot of bottle stoppers, and Tod's going to have to right quick learn how to do them so he can do his session tomorrow. We shall see. It'll be fun. And we know Tod's going to do a fun job. I haven't made a bottle stopper in 25 years, and I just made a couple of them yesterday for this too. So, what I'm going to start with, you can see this is not really so square, and it's not really trued up on the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and great point, Gary. They're not just for wine. They're great for oil and vinegar bottles, maybe a nice set of oil and vinegar bottles with matching stoppers or complementary ones. And if you're into other things besides wine, I've actually stoppered a beer with them successfully overnight. And Ruth makes a bunch of them for different sizes of whiskey bottles and things like that. Hello, Jennifer. Yes, I'm doing great. And it's nice to have you here and everyone else who's here. Really good to see y'all here. I got into making most of the things I make because I liked making gifts for people. And yeah, Matt's made more for giving to people than for actually for yourself, of course, but they are also a great product and a really good skill builder. And I'm going to show you my agenda for today, why I'm doing bottle stoppers today. They're also great for trying out new techniques. Like we're going to go through some of these techniques that we might be experimenting with, Tod and I, in this series. And okay, so let's get to, that wasn't exactly what I wanted. Where did it go? Oh, right. We'll get rid of that. And okay, yes. Well, bring your questions on. I'm keeping track of them. Okay, yes. If you have a source for your part of the world for bottle stopper kits, corks and dowels, I can post links afterwards for those. You can get them on Amazon. Get the corks on Amazon. You can get the dowels probably on Amazon, but I get them at my local Woodcraft. So lots of places to get the parts in different parts of the world. So I'm starting my blank here, and I've put it in the chuck, and I'm just going to make sure I have my chuck plenty tight, and I do. And I will first lathe up at full speed. I've got my safety eyewear on. I will first just skim off the end here with my parting tool. And by the way, this is another project I'm doing with minimal tools. I love that. We're going to be using a parting tool and a bowl gouge for the entire job. I just skimmed off the end there to true it up. Let's take a look. That's just to get this end cleaned off because the blank was really not square on the end, and it's also needs to be round. So next I'm going to get the blank round. Can we go this way? Okay. And I'm just using my bowl gouge and doing it quickly to get the piece round. I have the tail stock up because having the tail stock allows me to kind of go faster and with less concern that I might knock the piece out of the chuck. I mean, you're not going to knock the piece out of the chuck if you have the tail stock up. So this is good here. And for rounded off, the wood I'm using is, we'll take a look here. It is ash. Get a little closer there. Sure, why not? And this is just a piece off a tree that came down at my friend's house. The reason I'm using ash is because what I want to do today is I made this waterfall bowl. Oh, does anybody hear meowing? There's a cat here. He needs something. I made this waterfall bowl. This is what I did in the class a couple weeks ago. And actually what I did in the class was a burl piece, but this is a piece of a log with a bark on it. And I want to do a finish that I saw. Actually, I saw Tod do this most recently on some goblets. It's a black and white finish, and I'm using the, let's see if I can find a cat here. Come here, you. If you're going to come talk to me, you're going to have to talk to everybody. Here we have my friend Carter making a fairly rare appearance. Usually he won't come out to the shop unless he actually needs something. So he's probably in need of, it's got to be one of three things. He wants to go outside, he needs food, or he wants me to scratch his head. So, yeah, as soon as I'm done here, Carter. All right, so I want to test the finish. I want to try out a finish I haven't done before, and I'm using the bottle stopper as a canvas for testing out the process of some finishes. And you'll see the results here because I did a few and I tried a few things and I've got some results. But I just wanted to go through the bottle stopper making process, just the basics of it. I'm planning on using a cork and how I'm going to approach that. So I will drill the hole in this setup, and I'm going to slightly undercut this end here. Can we get closer? No. Or do I need to get back over here? And now I can get closer? No. I'm going to use my parting tool to make a little depression that will guide the drill. I'm slowing the lathe down to about 300 or 400 RPM for the drilling. And I've got a drill the size of my dowel in a Jacob's chuck to put in the tailstock. The comments here about Carter, he is looking great these days. And about 3 months ago, he got in a fight with another cat, silly boy. And he's been sort of struggling in recovery, but he's now recovered and he's doing great. And I'm really happy. And yeah, Matt, this is the deal. I'm going to try a finish where I stain the wood and then I put some colored wax in the grain. And you can do other things too, like stain it, sand most of the stain off, and then you leave stain where the open grain is. But that open grain of ash is a really great thing to do certain kinds of finish. And it's nice to turn too. And yeah, if you don't get ash where you live, send me an email, and I cut up a number of blanks for today's experiment here. And so if you need some, email me and I'll send you a couple of blanks. So yeah, we've got the lathe spinning about 300 or 400 RPM. I've got my drill bit in the tailstock, and I'm going to drill, and I put a little magic marker line on there about how deep I want to drill. Knock down my tailstock, that'll help. I'm not really that worried about if this hole is perfectly, like you can see the drill is kind of wandering and it's not drilling perfectly straight. But you know, once I put the piece on the lathe, locating on that hole, I will be truing it up in relation to the hole, so it won't really matter if it's completely, if the hole is perfectly true. What I used to do when I made these for a living, actually, is I used to drill them on the drill press anyway. I didn't drill them on the lathe. I would take a bunch of these rectangular blanks like this, and I would put them in a clamp and drill them on the drill press. And then I have a blank with a hole, and this hole is going to be located on the lathe. I'm going to get to that here just a second. The stain and then gold gilt cream mixed with denatured alcohol. Now that's something else to try, is different ways to get the grain enhanced. And I've tried a couple of things, but I could use trying a few more. And boot polish in the grain, yeah, that I guess means like leave it natural ash color, but fill the grain with something to accent. And yes, Carter is named after President Jimmy, and President Carter was, I consider him a diplomat in most of his career after the presidency. So Carter the cat takes after him. He was the diplomat in the family. He would always be the peacemaker. So yeah, that's Carter. Why he got in that fight, I guess, you know, if a guy challenges you, you just really have to. The alcohol dissolves the gilt cream, and I could see where a thinner bodied gilt cream would go deeper into those grain pores, and actually different products do different things there too. Green, purple, gold embellishing wax over black stain. Ooh, now you're talking. That like sounds really great. And y'all are having conversations on your own in there in the chat. And so, yeah, this is great. It's part of community here that we're able to interact here. Okay, so a couple of things about the how am I going to grip this? And first thing I'm going to show you is what I used to actually do when I made bottle stoppers. And this thing here is a pin vise or a pin chuck. And can I get in any further? Let's see if we're over here. It's a round metal dowel with a flat on it. The flat is just as deep as this little piece of, it's a little piece of round, it's a drill bit, a dead drill bit that I cut off. It is the same diameter as the depth of that step in the piece. This is a magnet. Oh, now I've lost my, that's why the magnet was on there. And now I don't know where that little rod went. Here I was trying to show off and it backfired. And I should now, I know, have another one of those little rods. Anyway, so if I had that little rod, when I put my bottle stopper on with the rod in the middle of that flat area, then when I turn the piece, the rod moves over and anchors in, jams in against the flat and holds the piece securely. And that's how I used to do them, with that pin chuck. And that was good. But here's another way that might be something more accessible to people who can't maybe mill a flat on a piece of rod and mount it onto something. This was made for a 1'8" lathe, actually, so it's on an adapter to get to my 1¼ 8" lathes. And here's what I'm going to do today. We've all got one of these. It's a screw center that goes in the chuck. Pretty much every chuck comes with one of these, and you grip. Let's see if I can show how it grips exactly. It's going to grip in between the jaw centers so that that ridge right there is anchored behind the jaw plates. And then when I tighten the jaw, worm screw is what it's called. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, it's a worm screw. Screw center, I guess. So I'm now going to tighten up that in the chuck. And I've got a screw that's a good size for putting my bottle stopper on. The bottle stopper was drilled to the size of the 3/8 dowel, and just so happens that these worm screws are the right size to thread on there. But the deal is, I don't need that much thread for my bottle stopper because the dowel is only going in about 3/4 inch, 20 millimeters. So I don't need to have this long of a screw. So what I've done is I made myself a little thing out of a scrap piece of wood, and it screws on. It's just a spacer, really. And that gives me just enough thread sticking out. And then these diameters, this is the diameter of the cork. And this is kind of the diameter that I want my stopper's base to be. And for this kind of stopper, what I want to see is, we can see that here, I want just a little bit, maybe we can see it better with the lighter colored wood. I want a little bit of a flat here so that the base of the stopper is just a little bit bigger than the cork. And that's because when you get these corks, the cork is not really drilled perfectly on center. So it's not, if you made your base exactly the size of the cork, then some corks are going to go on and they'll stick out on one side and not on the other. So I always made the base just a little bit bigger than the cork to accommodate for that. And that's what I've got here is this diameter is bigger than the cork, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. But as long as my base is bigger than that small diameter there, then I will have something I like. And that tightens on really well, but I am going to, as always, bring up the tailstock until it's actually in the way. So yeah, screw chuck is another word for them. This is the kind of screw chuck that goes in your chuck, and most chucks come with one that fits that chuck. And yeah, I didn't emphasize that I was doing it, but to get this screw chuck worm screw seated properly, I need to pull it out. I don't have one nearby anymore now. Need to pull it out so that large diameter firmly comes up against the back side of the inner jaw. Well, that's going to happen automatically when I tighten up the piece onto the screw chuck, because the screwing in motion is going to shorten the screw and pull the flange right up against the back of the jaws. So it kind of corrects itself if you didn't get it perfectly. Oh, and look at this. My friend Alan Z is here. Great to see you here, Alan. He taught me how to do all this video stuff. So if you like what you see, thank him. I couldn't have done it without him. The Live Center is one that I make and sell on my website, and it's a small live center. The tip, it's got some different tips that come with it, and this one is a miniature cup with a tiny point, and it's really good for small stuff. Yes, Alan is either to congratulate or to blame, but you know, when I make mistakes, we'll just all blame it on him. Yeah. Okay, so here I am now with my tailstock up, and I'm going to make my bottle stopper. So this is my last turning setup here. I've got one setup where I drilled the hole, just putting you can see the jaw marks, putting the blank in the square blank in my jaws. Drilled a hole in the end, faced off the end because it's easier done at that point. And then I put the screw chuck in my chuck jaws with a little spacer. And here's how I'm going to turn the piece. It's not the most secure, stable, or not stable's not the word. It's not the most vibration-free support of this piece of wood. So I'm keeping the tailstock up as long as I can. And also, I don't know if you can see it, but the blank is not spinning true. And that's because when I drilled the hole, the drill didn't go in perfectly on center. And then when I mounted it in the chuck, that screw center probably didn't go perfectly on center. So you've got a little bit there of inaccuracy, but at this point, it will be accurate around the center hole, the dowel hole. So the inaccuracy is now taken away. And I put on the chuck end a chamfer. There are 3 basic shapes to our wood turnings, maybe to everything in the world too, if you get right down to it philosophically. Straight lines, curved lines, concave curves, and convex curves. So you've got straight, concave, and convex. That's a V, groove, cove, and bead in wood turning terms. I'm making a nice curve on the end here, and I'm leaving a little bit at the tailstock so I can part it off. I made a V groove cut here. I made a bead cut here. And now I'm going to make a cove cut here. I'll work from both sides with the cove. And you notice when I do this cut, every cut stops short of the last one, because if I hit against here, it can get real grabby when I'm presenting this wing to that wall of end grain. So I don't want to go crash into the wall with every cut. And this will cut best, this wood with the grain oriented to be parallel to the axis of the lathe, will cut best if I cut side grain. And that's a planing cut with a wing, or it's also with the tip. Now I'm making an entry cut, and I'm going to go over all of these cuts I use on a bottle stopper or finial when I do my finials and pedestals IRD next weekend. So here's a cove, and I'm going from one side down to the middle and then the other side down to the middle and cleaning up the middle. Yes, I'm using a bowl gouge, and this bowl gouge is what you'd call a 40-40 grind, although that's not so significant, really. Any bowl gouge of your choice will do. And you know what? I should have not finished it all already, because I could be using any number of other things, such as a carbide. This is a Jimmy Clue's mate tool, and this can work a shape like I did here. I could use just a plain old flat top carbide scraper or any other kind of scraper. Here's a Hunter carbide that would also do this job. I personally like the bowl gouge, but if you don't have a bowl gouge, you could do this with something else. You could probably even do this with a skew, and there is no advantage of using a bowl gouge versus a spindle gouge. Either one works just as well. I just set a challenge for myself here today that I'm going to do this project with two tools, bowl gouge and parting tool, because if you're a beginning wood turner and you don't want to have to buy a bunch of tools, the two first tools to buy, in my opinion, are the parting tool and a bowl gouge, because you can do so much with just those two tools without having to buy anything else for quite a while. So that was my goal here. I just kind of set that challenge for myself. And I'm going to violate that rule here and use this parting tool perhaps, but I don't need to. I could have either left a bigger spigot there, or I could just take away my tailstock and do the rest of it. And here's where I like to use a gouge versus a scraper. It's not supported particularly well. And yeah, because I left the tailstock up until I had only a small diameter left to cut, I'm not stressing that chucking method very much. But a bowl gouge type of cut, a bevel rubbing cut, is going to cut, let's take a look at the end here, is going to cut the fibers more cleanly, and it's going to give me the ability to take a light cut with less pressure against the wood, meaning less, I don't know if you can hear that chattering, but there's less chatter from the holding system, which is really just a 3/8 diameter screw. And I definitely agree, the bowl gouge is more versatile. There are more things I can do with the bowl gouge than I can with a spindle gouge or a skew. But there are things I can't do that I can do with a skew or a spindle gouge that I can't do with a bowl gouge. Just the bowl gouge is very forgiving. And I don't know as though I would say you can't use a spindle gouge on a end grain bowl. It would be slow and painful. But I do tiny bowls and I do hollow them with a spindle gouge. So it depends on the scale of your work. And there are always a million different ways to do pretty much everything. And I'm only showing you one here today. And let me show you here today where we're going next, which is now it's time for sanding. And I'm going to slow the lathe down to probably 300 to 500 RPM. And I'll start my sanding with, well, I didn't do the greatest job on that shape, and I could have fiddled around with it more. So let's start with 180. And I'm just going to hold the sandpaper on here and do my sanding until I have the shape I like. And I'll sand this cove here from the low point up to the high point without coming back over that edge. I don't want to round over that sharp corner. I want to maintain that crisp shape. So, a lot of times people will say, okay, sand through all the grit. And what do we mean by that? I mean, I started with 180, and then I'll do 240 and 400, and I'm not going to do them all. 400, 600, and 1,000. And then I'll have something I can put my finish on. And here's my bottle stopper done. One thing that I can do is with a bottle stopper, and I used to do this, is finish them on the lathe. And to finish a bottle stopper on the lathe, there are millions of different ways to do it. And here are some of my suggestions and suggestions against. Oh, Matt, you actually bent a spindle gouge? Damn. I haven't done that myself, but I guess there's always a first time. Do I normally sand with the grain to get out the scratches? Personally, no. I just sand to really fine grit, and that gets the scratches out. But good point, you could sand with the grain. However, if you are on this piece here with the grain's running parallel to the bed of the lathe, but not on the end. That's end grain. So you're going to go cross the end grain on the end, or maybe you're just going to only sand this part of it with the grain. That can help. Like I said, there are millions of different ways to do everything, and I personally don't happen to do that, nor do I personally happen to reverse the lathe between grits, but lots of people do, and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so trying to hollow a bowl, and I'm guessing too much tool rest overhang for a small diameter tool, and probably presenting the cutting edge so that it was way too aggressive, and a catch. So I don't like to make blanket statements like, don't use a spindle gouge on an end grain bowl. I'm going to say use the tool that's appropriate for the job, and it might be a bigger spindle gouge. For instance, Stuart Mortimer used to always hollow his big hollow forms with a 1/2-inch spindle gouge, and we're talking big, deep hollow forms. So, and they're end grain. It's basically like hollowing a big end grain hollow form. So, a lot of different ways to do things. I'm showing you my way, but it's not the only way to do it. And actually, with the bent thing, you're kind of lucky that it was one of those tools that's not heat treated all the way up to the tang, because it might have shattered and that could have been bad, especially if you're new to turning and haven't figured out the face shield thing yet. And I do not think he was talking about spindle roughing gouge. I think he's talking about spindle gouge. Can you clarify that for us, Matt? Because a spindle roughing gouge is a whole nother animal. And that's food for another discussion here. I want to talk about finishes on my see if I can get over here somewhere. I'm trying to get my program to work like it's supposed to. There we are. Okay, so Matt says it was a 1/2-inch spindle gouge. That's a pretty beefy tool to be bending. That must have been one hell of a catch, and I'm guessing there was a lot of tool rust overhang too, and not a roughing gouge. Roughing gouges are also famous for taking too aggressive of a cut if you try to use them on end grain particularly, but the reason they are not good is because there's so much edge to contact the wood that you can just get way too aggressive and the tool can't handle it. So finishes on the lathe. A friction type finish works really well. This is Shellawax Cream. It's Australian made friction polish that's shellac based. I used to love using this. It's not a good finish for something that people are ever going to touch with wet hands, like something in the kitchen, like a bottle stopper, because it's not waterproof. If I wanted a waterproof pad-on type finish, I might go for this pad-on finish. This is a friction polish. It's a sanding sealer. You can use them as a friction polish. And there are many other brands of lacquer-based friction polishes that function the same way. It's kind of a pad it on while the lathe is spinning and let the friction of the spinning piece dry the substance so that you have an instantly done finish. Lacquer is going to be much more durable, and so would a CA finish, which I haven't done a CA finish on bottle stoppers. No one did it back then, but that would be actually a perfect finish for something like this. This General Finishes Woodturner's finish is not a pad-on. It's a water-based polyurethane that does really well. It builds nicely, it dries really fast, and it sands well. So this is a good, if I want a film finish, like a built-up polyurethane look. Another thing I might use would be an oil finish. And we're starting to get now into stuff that's not quite so instantaneous as the friction polishes, because the tongue oil, you're going to need probably more than one coat, probably going to have to let it dry overnight. I used to do a reasonable finish in the old days by taking a tongue oil like this polymerized tongue oil here and saturate the wood, and then take a clean rag and a little bit of friction to sort of dry the oil, and then I'd put carnauba wax on top right away, using the friction to melt the wax, and then the rag to dry it. And you're not supposed to use a rag, though. You're supposed to use paper. All right. So haven't we all done a bunch of things dangerous? And yeah, we learn our lessons. The thing they say is what is it? Good judgment is a result of experience, and experience is a result of bad judgment. So we learn, and luckily, hopefully, we protect ourselves while we're learning. And that's the main thing about wearing eye protection and a face shield. It's not because you're deliberately going to try to hit yourself in the face with a piece of wood. It's because if everything you did that you thought was right still had one thing that might go wrong, then you need to have some protection. Spindle roughing gouges have been known to break at the tang, and it's usually because there's way too much wood in contact with the tool or made too much edge in contact with the wood, and the tang is not able to handle that. Okay, so everybody says, oh, weld a big steel rod on the tang and then you won't break it. Right, but then what's going to happen when you get that same catch? It's not going to break. Something else is going to give. Either the bowl's going to come out of the chuck or something like that. All right, so that sealer, which one? Maybe he's talking about the lacquer sanding sealer. Yes, everything has gone up. And Watco, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it personally because I don't like the smell of linseed oil. But yes, another line of good oil finishes that work very well for this sort of stuff. But for bottle stoppers, I always wanted something a little more immediate, a little more instantaneous. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a couple of different ways to make this piece black. Let's go back over here and look at this piece here. It's all sanded, and I've sanded it to 1,000 grit, let's just say. And I'm going to use either the Trans Tint penetrating alcohol thinned dye, or I'm going to use I thought I had more things there. I guess I missed them. All right, I'm going to have to just show you. Or I'm going to use India ink. Or I'm going to use rattle can lacquer. And a few combinations thereof. So here's the progression of my experimentation thus far. This is fun stuff. I made a number of bottle stoppers of this shape here. And the first one, I used rattle can lacquer. So it's black lacquer. And it's that Krylon brand, which I believe has some sanding sealer in it. It's not something you're supposed to put sealer down first and then top coat. You're just supposed to use one product for the entire finish. So I think it fills the grain a little bit. And then I filled the grain with this here, Hampshire Sheen Embellishing Wax. It's white. And this is the result I got. I think probably could have been a little bit more contrast. I was looking for a little more contrast, but when the grain is filled up like it did with the lacquer, it didn't get much contrast. Brushing with a wire brush, I haven't tried that, but that'd be another thing to do, maybe on this bottle stopper I have right here. And I'm thinking I'd want to do that before my final sanding, wouldn't I? Because the brush might scratch up the surface. So I would want to get some of the grain out of the soft areas and have a little bit more to fill and therefore get more contrast. Phoebing's leather dye and anything, RIT fabric dye and hair color dye and aniline dye. And if you're doing black, almost all of them, the black is very, very color fast. A lot of the other colors are not color fast. So this is why I use stain. So the next one I used a stain. I used that dye. Okay, it's not going to fill up the pores. I used the same white embellishing wax, and I got more contrast. Here's number 1 versus number 2 here. I got more contrast, but I don't have a top coat on it. And the Hampshire Sheen people say that you can lacquer over this wax, and lacquer over wax just does not sound right to me. But Okay, I'll give them that. I'll try that next. I'm going to put this one back on the lathe, and I'm going to spray a coat of lacquer over it and see if there's incompatibility between the wax in the grain and that lacquer. I do know I've tried General Finishes wood turners finish over this kind of wax, and it didn't stick at all. So those are a couple of things. So I tried the lacquer, black lacquer, Krylon type lacquer, pre-sealed lacquer, and then I tried stain and Hampshire sheen, and that's pretty good. And then I got to thinking, sanding sealer fills the grain. It's got solids in it that'll fill up grain pores, and that's kind of the part of the job of it. So lacquer, plain old lacquer, top coat with no base coat on it, soaks right into the grain. So I said, okay, let's try that, because maybe it will seal the surface before I put the wax on without filling up the pores. So that's clear. I don't have any black top coat that doesn't have sealer in it. So I put black dye on. No, I used India ink this time. Black India ink, clear lacquer, and this white stuff. It's Gilder's paste wax. And now I'm getting more like what I wanted. Some pretty good contrast here. So yeah, I'll try some other experiments too. One thing that might work is CA over the top of dye with wax in it. Another thing that made a difference, I think, is that on these first two here, I neglected to, and this is a little bit of our cambium layer in there that I didn't quite get out. And so I decided I'll just leave it. It'll be interesting. I did not blow out the dust out of the pores before I put the stain and the lacquer on. And that might have helped, because that's what I did with this one, is I blew out the dust out of the grain. And then I think this white stuff here is a little more heavy bodied and filled the grain a little better. So now what I will do is I will put glue in the hole, and I'll put my cork on, and I have a bottle stopper all done. So chestnut, spirit stains, those are aniline dye, as I understand it, and they work well. I don't know if they are as color fast as trans tint. I believe some people claim that trans tint is more color fast. That means over time it'll retain its color. And that is another thing that a person can do, is shellac. And that's not what Kirk is mentioning here exactly. He's saying that the shellac doesn't fill the grain up. It'll soak right in. But here's what else shellac will do. It is compatible with anything. Shellac can go on over wax and over any kind of finish that would not be compatible with another one, and act as a transition layer. So in other words, I could take this one here with the wax in it, and I could put a coat of shellac on it, and then a coat of lacquer or whatever else I wanted. And the shellac would keep from being incompatibility problems between the wax and the lacquer. Thank you very much for your kind words. Yeah, this is fun stuff here. Chromacraft Chroma Gilt Paste is another product I haven't used, but I'm guessing it'll give an effect similar to this, better. Who knows? Different colors, and there are lots more colors besides white that a person might use here too. And I could do, like, for instance, purple and gold. Ooh, that would be great. So yeah, let's revisit some of the stuff coming up here in the future. The the near future. Tomorrow, Tod is going to do round 2 of bottle stoppers, and I can't wait to see what he comes up with and what he shows us tomorrow, 2:30 Central, and I hope you'll be there. If you're interested in being a demonstrator at AAW, the deadline is coming up fast, August 1st, and they take a fair number of new demonstrators every year. So it's a good thing to get your feet wet into the demonstrator arena, always. And my next IRD on finials and pedestals, lidded containers part 2, will be a week from this coming Saturday. This coming Saturday, I have a free sharing and Q&A session at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is, what is it, 1800 UTC? I don't say GMT anymore because I don't know if GMT and BST are the same thing. And there's some confusion there. So universal time, universal coordinated time. And if you sign up for my subscription list, let me post that in the chat here one last time. You will get the link to Saturday's free session, and it'll be fun. So I hope to see y'all there. And I need to get rid of that. I'll kind of go back there. Okay. And if you've got a last question, I'm really out of time, but now here's a good suggestion too. Torching with a propane burner and then wire brushing. The propane torch will burn the stuff in the pores of the ash, the summer wood, faster than it burns the rest of it. So you get more definition between the soft and the hard areas. And that could be really good. Sandblasting is another thing. Oh, and Tod doesn't know what he's going to do either. So we shall see. We know it'll be good, though, whatever it is. And yeah, any more questions? Last one. Here's the last word to leave us with. Fun. That's what it's about. That's what we're all here for. And I hope y'all have lots and lots of fun. I'm going to sign off and leave you to go make some bottle stoppers. Please do, and bring them to Saturday's session and show us what you've done. Hope to see you soon. Bye.